our panel to you. We're going to first hear from Jim Kasamis, Manager of National Imports and Logistics at Mercedes-Benz USA. We'll also have some words from Peter Holcombe, Director of Business Development at Voith. Nicole Humphrey, Manager of Business Intelligence and Analytics at Vascor. Martin Coalson, President of Insight Network Logistics, and joining the panel as well, we have Ed Wilson, General Manager of Vehicle Logistics for the Volkswagen Group of America. So again, a good mix there of service providers, IT sort of specialists, and some OEMs. So looking forward to a lively debate. Jim's going to kick us off with some slides, and look forward to having a good discussion after. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Is there a clicker? How do you work this? Okay, so I just want to briefly touch on some of the opportunities that technology allows to enable what we call the integrated finished vehicle supply chain. I'm also going to talk about some of the challenges too, because as much opportunity as there are also a lot of obstacles along the course. I'm looking at this from the perspective of a manufacturer. So most of our cars are imported. We do build some cars in the US, but if you cut out from the processing center on, it's really the same as anybody who produces in the US. So the goal is really simple. It's just to find the most efficient way possible to get the right car to the right place at the right time. Satisfy customers. So let's break this down by component. The first is production overseas and also overseas at the port. And some of the opportunities here are, it's our first chance to share a long-term forecast with our carriers. So we can let them know an estimate of, not every car is assigned, but an estimate of what they should be getting. They could do their long-term planning, get assets in place, and also plan their other business around our plans. Also, vehicle status, very important to keep the customer and the dealer updated. So all that is automated and can be sent over. Production, this is kind of a pipe dream, but production to support an efficient logistics operation, kind of like the tail wagging the dog. And also ship loading by priority. So a lot of our cars come out of the factory in Germany. They're hot or sold cars. If you've ever seen the port in Germany, it's basically, we've got all the manufacturers there from Germany, big lines of cars, and it's basically FIFO, first in, first out. So it wouldn't be real nice to have our hot cars, priority cars, be the last ones loaded, so the first ones taken out so we can work on them right away. Okay, when you move to on the water and then import in the US, automatic ETA updates, the ship schedule changes all the time, rough seas and coming in quick, and we need to know that information for planning purposes, for our VPCs. Also storage capacity. So once we know what's on a boat, we can forecast out based on processing plans and kind of identify proactively whether we're going to need storage or whether we have capacity to handle that at our facilities. Damage reporting, so anything that's damaged on the boat, we can have parts ready and waiting at the VPC, our Vehicle Processing Center, and also have the manpower there to repair the vehicles. And now we have more of as the ship is coming in, we have a much better estimate that we can give to our carriers. So more of a 10-day estimate that we can give to them. Not every car is assigned, but we have a good idea where they're going. And then we would like to get that information back also that they can handle that. So that we know if a carrier is going to have problems picking up a car, we know in advance. We don't find out 4 days after the car was assigned to the carrier. Customs filing, that's a no-brainer. Automation there saves a lot of time, a lot of paper. Priority unloading, okay, if you can't get it at the port, have systems at the port of entry where you can separate cars by priority and then, again, process those cars faster. Also, our port and VPC work plan, so we can plan ahead, have the manpower there when the vehicles get to the country. All right, this is a great opportunity here is the processing center. Really, you can have total yard management through technology. Your processing plans could be estimated based on what's coming in. We can figure out what our logistics providers have in store or what their capacity is and kind of build our production plans around that or processing plans. You look at these handy devices, scanner, something like this, and we don't necessarily have anything like this, but something similar, but you can scan each vehicle, find out specific work instructions for that vehicle. You do your inventory management, your lot tracking, you can build loads, and also give immediate real-time feedback to the factory on any quality issues or things that are found in the car. Now we have a much better idea of where these cars are going, so we can give our carrier a 5-day estimate forecast of what's coming in so that they can fine-tune their vehicles and their capacity to take care of what we have coming out. And also the automation of the carrier assignment, so once the car is processed and ready and load, notify the carrier, and when the carrier picks up the car, automatically capture that information also. Finally, the last leg is the transport to the dealer and being received at the dealer. And obviously the big benefit here is visibility. So the ability to track vehicles wherever they are, whether it be GPS or RFID. Provide updated ETA notices to dealers. I mean, if a car is going to be late, that's bad enough. If a dealer knows a week or 10 days in advance, it's much better than finding out a day before it's supposed to be received. So they can notify the customer, set the expectation. Dealers can plan, they can have their receiving people ready. So the truck comes in and out, it helps truck efficiency, also helps keep the dealership lot empty or moving. This is also where we can capture our KPIs on performance. So we can identify how carriers are doing by the truck driver, identify any possible holdups in the production line or in the carrier capacity, in the carrier performance, excuse me, and also damage claims, automate that, a lot less paperwork, a lot quicker processing, and turnaround of payment. EPOD, no-brainer, proof of delivery, which also can generate automatic carrier payments. Win-win, easy for the dealer also. So these are the opportunities, but with these come some potential pitfalls or obstacles. So first thing is really lumped into two categories, compatibility and standardization. And here we talked about it in the earlier session. You have most manufacturers have legacy systems, so you're adding these bolt-ons. You have to do manual integration, manual data mapping. The better ways to do is to standardize, and I applaud Chrysler and the AIAG for taking initiative, pushing the envelope on EPOD and getting all stakeholders in a room and together so we can come up with standardized data fields, standardized processes. This way we can all build off and make it much more efficient to integrate. Factory production objectives. Again, the objective of the factory is quick, efficient flow of production. So it doesn't necessarily align with the logistics needs. So again, that's somewhat of an obstacle to achieving that. Data security is a no-brainer. There's so many systems in place, keeping the data secure. Data overload, just having so much data that you don't know what to do with it, and where do you store all this data. And then resistance. So resistance to change, to using these new systems, to using an electronic log. Resistance to transparency. So OEMs being transparent with dealers and customers about where the cars are, carriers being transparent about their capacity, where their capacity is, and so forth down the line. And finally, cost, return on investment. So if that's not there, it's very hard to get anything undertaken. So that's it, real brief.
All right, Jim, thanks for that. Again, I think some really great ideas to get us started there, looking at both what situation maybe as we see it, what's there, what opportunities, and of course what's kind of standing in the way. So plenty more to talk about that as we go to Q&A. Peter, do you want to come up next and kind of kick off with some introduction?
Good afternoon. Pete Holcombe, I'm with Voith, and I am responsible for the business development of our vehicle processing division. One of the things I just wanted to plant the seed to the audience and talk about is what next. We often talk about the technology we have, what are we doing with it, is it effective? But one of the things I kind of wanted to change and ask is, what do we believe is next? I've noticed an evolution. From my experience, we've come from data collection, the fact that we have data, we all decided, now what do we do with it once we have it? We figured that out. The next question was, I have this data, but it's relatively old. How do we get more real-time data? That solution's been figured out. Now we have data that's relatively fresh, somewhat real time. Next was, now that I have the data, how do I use it to be more effective and communicate with stakeholders? That's where we have arts and charts, and everyone has been able to take the data, put it into some type of graphical form, use it to their advantage, and we've crossed that barrier. For me, the question is, now what? We all have data. We have big databases. We have a huge collection of data. We're able to illustrate and display it, but now what? So my question is, I bring out there is, I believe the possibility for what next is what I'm going to call intelligent data. Not data that we pull from a database, not data that tells me what we did yesterday or what just happened, but data that tells us, or solutions, IT solutions, that tell us you are at a decision point, right? So basically, is the industry ready for intelligent data that basically tells us you have an issue, basically, and you need to make a decision at this point through alerts, through some type of communication. I think too often we spend time historically looking back through data versus allowing the data work for us. In this day and age, we're all strapped for resources. No one's got time to put it all together. So the question is, I believe the next step is, now that we have this data, now that we know that we can utilize it, how do we get the data to work for us and to be able to communicate decision points that are ahead of us in real time, so that we don't have to be so dependent on the human element with the limited resources we're all challenged with. So that's kind of the question I throw out there. Is the industry, are we prepared now that we have this technology for that next step of intelligent data? So I leave that question for everybody for Q&A. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much for those thoughts, Peter. Next up, we have Nicole Humphrey from Vascor. Thank you.
Is this the clear to flip? Good afternoon. I'm going to talk more about the data and information and business intelligence and what we can do with business intelligence to improve the finished vehicle supply chain. So the buzzword out there right now is Internet of Things. And in the latest Inbound Logistics magazine, it said that by 2020, there will be 200 billion smart devices out there. It will be tracking everything that happens in the world. So every event in the finished vehicle supply chain can be tracked, anyone that touches it or moves it, and the devices are already out there. That's excellent, but how do we look at that information? You do that through business intelligence and through big data analytics. So basically, I narrowed it down to a couple opportunities: end-to-end real-time visibility, using smart devices, and real-time insights with advanced analytics. That would be using business intelligence to see what's occurring right now, predictive analytics to see potentially what is going to happen, and prescriptive analytics, which gives you solutions. An example would be, we had severe weather this past winter. Everyone had it. And using prescriptive and predictive analytics, you can take web data and mine it with what's in our systems and forecast where weather is going to happen. And then you can take prescriptive analytics, and that will tell you, here's your options, where you should take your vehicles so that you miss those severe weather events. So that's an example. There's a lot of other things you can do with that. In order to get there, we need three things: collaboration, standardization, and investment. And this kind of goes back to what you were saying. Without having collaboration, we can't break the data silos that we currently have. That means you have to be able to merge the information together, again, to present it in a fashion so that it is beneficial to everyone. So we need to work on multi-partner data sharing and understanding what the standards are and how to really build a platform so that we can see information across all tiers of the supply chain. You also need excellence in data governance. The data that we are handling in the finished vehicle supply chain must be secure. The human component, a computer can do a lot of things, but one thing it cannot do is present information in a manner that is intelligent across the board. And you still need a human to build the business logic, to understand the architecture that needs to be put into these solutions. And we need to embrace the big data initiative. Gartner did a study, 8% of shippers and only 5% of 3PLs have started utilizing big data. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for us. This is, again, the Enterprise Business Intelligence, which is the platform that will give you the information present it in a manner so that it's intelligent and you're able to act upon it. And these are opportunities in action, and these are some of the tools that are out there right now. ePod. Vascor currently uses ePod. We're using it not just for proof of delivery, but we're using it at multiple points in the supply chain to see where a vehicle was handed off. An Enterprise Content Manager, that gives you a macro view and a micro view of what is occurring to a vehicle in the supply chain. So you can see it at a very high level and you can drill down. That integrates information from multiple systems, and it takes information that is stored outside of a system where you can see it all in one spot. So Excel spreadsheets that are not captured anywhere, you can see them through an Enterprise Content Manager. And then of course, interactive intelligence, predictive models. That's where we're headed. I believe that in the next few years, we're going to have real-time information and everyone will be able to see, this is where my vehicle is right now in the network, not this is where it was yesterday when someone scanned it or it passed somewhere. Because the technology's there and we can do it, and it excites me. And that's it, that's all I have.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks again, Nicole. Martin, you want to come in and do your stuff from here? Yeah, okay. So Martin Coalson from Vascor. Thank you.
From inside.
Inside. My
Well, good afternoon. I tell you, I've enjoyed the comments of the other speakers and wanted to take a few minutes to share with you now some of the work that we're doing. And really, for those of you that may know me, I'm one of those guys who's always trying to look just over the horizon, what's coming at us, and then what do we do with it. So I've got some comments about that as well. So really, in our mind, the key to good, effective network management really begins with planning. And the planning is all around starting with a well-designed network. So there's good network modeling software out there today that regardless of what your business objectives are, you can effectively build a model of your distribution network. You can set objectives that you want to measure, be that cost, transit time, leveraging existing facilities, determining where you may want to invest in new assets, measuring your CO2 output, the velocity of your network, whatever it may be. Starting with a good integrated network model and exploring different what-if type opportunities in that network model is key. And then having really robust vendor selection, understanding what your vendors' capabilities are, what their information communication capabilities are, and then whether they've or have the ability to meet your requirements. We believe that that's based a lot on really robust measurements, understanding not just what they say they can do, but really observing the facts of what they're able to produce historically and use that to predict the future. And then collaboration, we heard several people talking about that. It's really one integrated supply chain, getting that vehicle from a production facility through to that ultimate customer. And so sharing that information among all the supply chain partners, making their pipeline, even if it's a single dealer, what's his pipeline of vehicles coming to him, or a carrier, what's their pipeline coming to them? Where are they in that chain? When can they expect them? And it enables them to plan and be ready for that shipment. And then we heard it also from the other speakers, forecasting is a really critical process. And we believe that you should give forecast in regular increments, because the further into the future you make a forecast, the more assumptions you have to make about the future. So doing like a 90, 60, 30-day forecast is something that we recommend. And in that, you can forecast required capacity at different locations, and you can take advantage of putting contingency plans in place and proactively address problems before they arise. And that really goes to good, robust contingency planning. We think that anticipating problems and having solutions in place is really part of having an effective network management solution. And then beyond planning comes execution. And execution is really enhanced by having end-to-end real-time network visibility and then measurement of all those systems. Just being able to have visibility of a particular vehicle moving through a supply chain is one time, but understanding the measurements and being able to do robust analytics on that is really critical going forward. And then at Insight, we really believe it's all about putting the customer and their logistics people, giving them centralized command and control over the network. Frequently, you've got the left hand doing one thing, the right hand doing another, and you lose that good, solid execution from having a single coordinated plan to execute. And that gives you that centralized command and control, and people are able to move forward toward common goals then. In this day and age, with what we've got available, proactive, automated alerts is the way you increase the productivity of your human labor. Being able to have people practice exception management instead of trying to manage all the vehicles in the supply chain, understanding what's exceeding a control limit, and then being able to address those particular instances. And that all really leads to efficient operations. So being aware that every participant in that supply chain affects the cost and the performance of it. So how do you find collaborative solutions? Are there ways that you can eliminate duplicate work? You know, what steps can you take to streamline that entire operation? And then it kind of leads us to what's in the future. And no, I really don't believe that we all have DeLorean time machines, but what is coming at us? We talked about it as kind of ePod, but we really believe that the explosion of mobile devices, I mean, I don't know anybody in North America that's over the age of about 12 that doesn't have a smartphone. And so the ability to push computer applications to them at extremely low cost and having that connectivity for information is really, I think, going to explode going into the future. Getting geo-time stamps, knowing precisely where an event occurred on this planet and at what time, incorporating photographs, video, documents. You can just imagine where the future may go with those devices. And then it was also mentioned about the Internet of Connected Devices. It's really if you think about it, the communication channels are largely in place. We've got cell phone coverage over most of this country. We've got Wi-Fi at a lot of locations, and then satellite can fill in any gaps there. But the sensors seem to be where the future is going. So being able to really create small sensors and embed them in transportation vehicles or the VINs themselves, you could do things like understand if a vehicle is a non-op before you have a problem to deal with as you're loading a truck. Understand if there's impacts involved in that vehicle. I mean, your imagination can really run with you when you think about low-cost sensors in a connected environment. There are artificial intelligence solutions out there as well. It's, you know, we talked earlier about, okay, first you get data, then you kind of turn it into useful information, and then the final step of that is really intelligence. What can you take out of this data, do some analysis on it, and learn from it that you can apply to your business solutions going forward? Another thing that I find is really exciting, how many of you have played with Google Earth or something and zoomed in on the satellite photo of your house and you can see your car parked in the driveway or whatever? It's fascinating, but that imagery is all generally several months old, if maybe not a year old. Real-time satellite imagery is right on the horizon here. So imagine being able to check a dealer's lot to see what inventory he actually has on hand or when it arrived, or looking at your carriers. Do they really have capacity in place that they may say that they're having? Being able to look at traffic congestion in real time and have that information available so haul-away carriers could consider an alternate route as opposed to being stuck in traffic. Providing ETAs to that dealer. I said I'm going to be there at 9 o'clock, but you know I'm going to have to reroute. It's going to be 9:45. And that type of real-time communication it's available to us now. And then finally, it's leveraging all this technology across all the participants in this value chain to really drive out waste, to have good contingency planning in place to execute when troubles arrive. So thank you, and it's not that hard. Let's do it.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Martin. Again, so, yeah, that's fine. Oh yeah, cheers. Putting some really interesting ideas for us there. Again, the theme of big data seems to be going right across the panel. Obviously reminded us about the DeLorean there. I do think 2015 is the year that Marty McFly went into the future. I can't say that it looks terribly like what they envisioned with flying cars and all that kind of stuff, but with all this data and all this mobile, I guess we don't actually need to fly, so that's actually some good news. Ed is going to make some comments and remarks before moving to Q&A. You can do that, just sit right from there.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I'm the non-technical guy here, so it's a little bit more opinion than anything else. You know, with the desire for KPI and reporting, you know, we're no longer the shipping guys. It's important that we understand that we're a big factor in the customer's delivery experience. Logistics managers, they monitor CSI, they monitor NADA and dealer council concerns to see how we're performing. So in addition to the data functions that we need to be able to satisfy our customers. And with that good data, accuracy, timeliness, we're able to succeed and perform and meet the brands or dealers and customers' expectations.
Yep, great. Okay, so we've heard from everybody there. I'd like to open it up now for Q&A. So predictably, the audience doesn't have any questions, but I'm sure they will wake up. I'll start. We've heard some. Thomas talked about. Peter talked about. Sorry, intelligent data, and Nicole, you presented a lot of the. A lot of these analytics that we can do and all this kind of advanced stuff. To what extent are we already seeing this being done in finished vehicle logistics? Sometimes I have the fear that all of this amazing technology seems to pass this industry by a little bit. So how far are we, or how advanced are we, and where do you see that this can be applied now, as opposed to some distant point in the future where the DeLorean will have to travel? Anyone want to start?
I think we're doing pieces of it, right? We're just not doing it large enough. And I think the opportunity for us is to do it across, again, the entire network, because that's where the value is. So you're going to see advanced analytics in pieces of the network. I think you're right that sometimes technology does pass this industry, but it's out there. It is. And we can use it, and it's simple. there is a simple solution, but if we do have to collaborate, there has to be some type of standardization to ensure the information is secure and that we break down data silos to get there, but it is. I mean, I hope that one day I can get on my phone and say, because I just bought a brand new car, here's where it's at. I can see it coming through the network. I mean, how exciting would that be? But you can do it on a UPS package. Why can't we do it on a finished vehicle?
A lot of stakeholders involved with that,
Yes.
so it's not just like having UPS.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
really, it's happening with Gen Y. I mean, these guys know when the cars are coming in, so they're able to, turn that off real quick.
Technology.
Yeah, exactly. So we're using, they know that already, they're calling up, when is this car going to be received? So the information is out there. As far as analytics, I mean, we use a lot of data to help manage the performance of our carriers. It's helped us improve their performance, make them more efficient. I think they find good use of it. It's somewhat standardized. We have information coming from a vendor that's collecting it from a lot of different, no plug for ICL, but it's coming from a lot of different manufacturers, so they're taking it in the same format. We don't have information to compare to, but we can compare among our carriers, so we're using that right now.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a reluctance. I think there's plenty of technology out there, and it could, you know, you can track your pizza, you can track your car. There's a reluctance for the OEMs to let the customers look behind the curtain. And we don't publish all we know. You know, I know where my cars are, you know where your cars are, but we don't share that. I think, you know, rather than, you know, if you have, you know, shared data or so forth, or if one OEM really took that lead and started publishing stuff, everybody would be challenged to publish more detailed information to the customer base. So if Mercedes started putting, here's your car, on their website, and you could track it everywhere and understand it, no doubt Audi would be right after you. You know, it's a matter of somebody's got to make that step.
Yeah, I'll just comment that, you know, we talked a lot about forecasting. I believe forecasting is a real key toward helping a supply chain respond effectively to, you know, surges and valleys as they come through the supply chain. And there's a lot of rich data that can go into scientific models to help make forecasts. And a lot of people can make a forecast. The trick is having a really accurate forecast that suppliers and customers can have some faith and confidence in to take action on. So when you talk to people about doing forecasts, always be sure to ask them about their accuracy and about their measures. And there's a world of big data, macroeconomics, weather, meteorology, other things that can affect those forecasts. The other thing that's very real is doing proactive alerts, being able to not manage every vehicle in a pipeline, but to be able to identify which vehicles are outside of your control limits and that have a potential issue where you need to have a human take some action on. It makes a much more productive use of the human labor component there as well.
I think the industry sometimes likes to put the effort and energy of technology into the actual product. And the logistics piece of it isn't necessarily always a sexy part. It's not necessarily what sells the cars. So I think it actually gets shortchanged a lot on the IT. And one of the things I think it would be impressive is to have more of your OEMs basically willing to do beta testing. I think we get focused on, if you have a new idea, a new solution, we get caught up in, well, can you promise me the end result? And I think sometimes that we get so caught up in making the perfect end result that we forget to learn along the way. And I think as if we actually learned along the way and we're willing to take some steps, we're going to learn stuff that we wouldn't have planned out, we couldn't have even decision mapped. And I think that's the part that I'd like to see change, is the industry willing to take small steps, challenge themselves, learn from what we've done, and move on with the IT versus have it perfectly mapped out. We have the final solution that is somewhat guaranteed, which we can never guarantee with IT.
Sort of a high-level question, I suppose, from my side again, but yeah, how much visibility is too much visibility? You know, we talk about the customer, how much the customer, would they really be excited? I don't know how excited they might be to see their car stuck in some northern German port for 4 weeks for whatever reason. That, as Ed mentioned, that might not actually be the information it wants to make public. But kind of more seriously, I mean, we talk about real-time Amazon-style tracking. You know, is that really what this industry needs? Do you need that, you know, granular detail, or, you know, is it more of a milestone? So, some thoughts.
I think it's important. I don't know if you need to be that exact. You just have to be proactive in telling what the issues are. Yes, some OEMs are reluctant to give total visibility because there's some things you might not want the customer to know. Some things are out of your control. What happened this winter with the shortages, we had nothing to do with that, but if someone had seen the visibility of their vehicle, they would assume something was wrong there. So you want to give accurate ETAs so that you can manage expectations of customers, but I think you have to be careful about the visibility until we get a better handle on everything we can control and can't control.
I think the visibility is fine, but I agree with, I believe, Martin, you had mentioned it's exception management. I think that's where the real value is. We don't want to look at every car all the time where it is, because there's a large percentage of them which are flowing just as expected. So if you can take that noise out, then you can spend all your time managing the exception. That's where I think the real value is. So to me, it's not visibility of everything. It's visibility of the necessary pieces which take most of your time up. So my suggestion would be visibility of exception management is the first place I'd go.
Nicole, I guess this sort of echoes to what your point in terms of the need for the human piece of this in a way, because if all this data is flying around, all this information, you need someone who actually knows which are the pieces, of the critical parts that should be focused on. Any questions at this time from the audience? If you're really tech savvy, or you want to prove you're tech savvy, you could also log into our sort of live site and ask me the question via my phone. But perhaps this industry just isn't really ready for that level yet either. So. And you know, it was raised a little bit earlier about sort of data security, things like that. So we were talking about smartphones and the Internet of Connected Things, and everybody has a smartphone, but to what extent do we see it, or do we want to merge those two things, in the sense that a driver's smartphone becomes a tool in the logistics professional flow? I mean, is that sort of a murky area? I mean, there's a lot of potential there, but there's also potentially some security issues, I suppose we can imagine as well. And not least maybe cost too, because we take for granted, we feel like they're free, but they're certainly not. So I mean, just if there are any thoughts on that.
It's a danger. I mean, you have to have controls. I know with Apple, one of the hesitancies, they're not real enterprise friendly, so any app you produce has to be put out to the public, so you don't have a lot of proprietary information. Security is a little tight. So you've got to be careful. If someone leaves your company, do you have a control in place to shut off access right away before some damage could be done? So I think it's not there yet, but something to work towards right now.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, security is something that's always going to have to be top of mind in an environment where there's a lot of available data and connectivity. So you can never back off on that. But one of the things that I find really fascinating, we were talking about visibility to information earlier, and you know, we all have those handful of kind of customer horror stories where it's like, everything that can go wrong does go wrong, and you get really vocal customers. And I think it's those type of activities that tend to cause us in business to hesitate making information available to customers. But I know in our personal experience, when we look at who logs on and uses the information that we have in our systems, the #1 user is the destination car dealer. They're probably 50% of the log-ons to our system each day and all the hits. And then the next largest user are the carriers. The carriers are logging in and viewing what's in their pipeline, helping them manage their business. And then for the OEM, they're big users, but they're third in that chain. So the actual customer who's hired us to manage their network is one of the smaller users out of all the information that we have available. And so there's a lot of value for those other parties in the supply chain to have visibility to this. And sometimes I think we tend to over-restrict it because of that 1 in 1,000 that goes really bad and you've got a vocal customer out there.
That's a good point. Any questions, comments from the audience? I ate too much lunch, they're all a bit sleeping here. I think it was, well, a couple of people mentioned EPOD. Obviously, we know, we've discussed at this conference in the past or recently how Chrysler had mandated it. Maybe Jim and Ed can talk a little bit about the approach, that specific approach that Mercedes and Volkswagen is taking. Is it a mandate or is it more of a, more of a piece, an evolution? So, talk to you.
It's a great idea. I mean, we looked at it. I don't think we were ready yet. And again, we have, as Rory mentioned, limited resources, IT resources, and we have legacy systems. So it's a lot of work to take that and integrate it fully. Where we can help is on standardizing a process. I mean, we may do things a little differently, but having a standard process that can be built into a system like that might help. But the way we would be using that information right now is probably mapping it out and getting it kind of the old-fashioned way.
Same with us. You know, we have a lot of carriers that Chrysler uses, and that information will be available to us. We have legacy systems, though we are upgrading our systems right now. Yeah, it's great to have, but for us right now, it's not in use.
Yeah. Okay, great. A question in the front.
Can I yell it out?
You can yell it because I think, well, James is young. He should be able to run that quickly.
The question is for James and for Ed. There's been mention of, oh, sorry.
It's also for the benefit of our live audience, so they can hear.
Yeah, the question is for James and for Ed. There's been mention of legacy systems. There's been mention of a need for investment. In the OEM's world, everybody fighting for capital, will you get the investment money you need to upgrade the systems and to support the investment that needs to happen to get the supply chain fully integrated?
We have investment where we have a upgrade of a sales and distribution system worldwide. It's a global solution. It's in use in Austria right now, and it's coming for USA. And we've attached to that investment a logistics module, and it'll do a lot of the things that we need to do. So we are the benchmark for the global solution that will go to other countries. So Austria's got a sales and distribution system, brand new. Now we are developing the logistics module that will be part of the global solution. So yes, we got the investment. It was recognized. Systems were over 20 years old, and it was recognized.
We have to fight for the investment. I mean, we have to present a case. Everybody in the company is presenting their cases, and you battle for the money. If you put in a good business case, there are resources available, but some of our legacy systems are so ingrained, it would take a fortune to really unwind them. And another threat with a lot of these legacy systems, you only have a few in-house experts, and some of those folks get up in age. I think every company's got the same situation, so you run the risk of, having a legacy system with nobody to really operate it. So we're working at it.
One other piece from that, what we did is there's a recognition that every country had their patches, and they're all different patches all over the world, and that's why it was put out. It's a global solution. They wanted to reduce that across all the Volkswagen sales countries and implement one solution. So that's, USA didn't get it. It's a global solution being pushed out to us.
Some of those global solutions, though, kind of can hinder at times. So
Yeah.
so enough said.
Yeah. You're trying to say that there are some small differences between Germany and America in some ways, perhaps.
Yes.
In our eyes.
We don't know what you're talking about.
What about a little bit from the provider side in terms of investment? I mean, obviously, if there's systems and equipment that you could apply across all your customers, then you can amortize that sooner. But when you have sort of dedicated facilities and solutions, then you're looking at automation, and you have a 2 or 3 year contract. You know, does this hold back some of the advancements in systems and technology that you would otherwise maybe be able to apply?
I actually believe it does, because some of these, as we were talking about, when you do some beta testing, there's some risk, financial risk, and also some operational risk. And when you have a short period of time to execute, either it can be challenging if you're taking that partnership and you're willing to both try to make that next step, knowing that there are those opportunities that it may not work out. And if it doesn't, and you have a 2 year contract, it could really challenge your contractual obligation. So I think is over the longer period of contracts, people are more willing to take those challenges because there's more opportunity to recover from both sides, fiscally and operationally. So I do think shorter contracts definitely stifle the willingness of people to take those leaps of faith with IT specifically.
Will you guys agree on that?
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think if there's significant investment required, then the length of the contract certainly allows you to amortize that over a larger number of units and lower the cost. But many of these systems are very scalable too. And so having the opportunity to make that investment and then get put new volume through those same systems is very doable. I think over the longer term, relationships can get very deep and strong, and once an investment's been made, then the contract term that's required can be shortened up, but that can discourage investment in new capability. But I think it's something that companies that are in a technology space have to be very aware of and effectively be continuously refreshing their systems and capabilities.
Yes. This technology's life cycle is 3 years, and so you do have to continue to not only maintain it, but to upgrade it as technology changes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Any other questions or comments, points from our audience? Question in the front. James, can you? Come on, knees up. A bit more.
Good afternoon. Scott Good with Volkswagen Group of America. Nikki, this is for you. Referring to the business intelligence aspect of the issues that you guys are dealing with and that you're putting out, that to me seems to have the biggest amount of bang for the buck, if you will, based, everybody's got the data.
Right.
We've all got the data, and we're all collecting it in different manners. But if you could kind of explain how does the business intelligence model really helping your guys' customers with their decision-making processes? Because it seems like it's a very cost-effective type of solution to just kind of lay that on top of an existing legacy-type system, if you will, to help generate some different results, if you will.
Yes, we are using business intelligence for several of our customers. That's helped them improve efficiencies in their operations and even in specific points of their networks, because we're able to work with them. We do agile business development, so I know a lot of you probably heard of agile IT development. When we do something similar where we work directly with the customer, we present them a solution and we modify it because it is scalable. It's not going to take 40 hours, right? We kind of laugh. If you ask IT to do it, that's 40 hours to do, This is they're very quick because it is so scalable and it's a platform. So I think because we can provide information that they can drill into from a summarized level all the way down into the, granular data, and the whole platform has alert. So we are doing exception management in it, and the alerts are very powerful.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other questions? A number of you raised the forecasting issue. Obviously, there's very difficult, no one has the crystal ball. But maybe specifically, Jim and Ed, are you now also forecasting internally for constraints on outbound logistics capacity, which can then be fed throughout the supply chain, whether it's even back to production or whether it's in vehicle processing or handling? I mean, in terms of forecasting the carrier capacity.
In our case, really the logistics supply chain has to be there. So we can't stop production because it's not there. So it's got to be there. And unfortunately, a lot of times you don't get a lot of advance notice that there's an issue. So it's hard to communicate what you. And I think that's one of the biggest voids right now is visibility of that, and even for the carriers to understand and foresee it. So.
Yeah, we can't forecast delay. It's not acceptable. It's not in our business model. So we have to catch it up in some way. And usually that means we're spending money to accelerate the supply chain to catch up everything that we've lost. The brands have specific numbers for the month, and it's our job to get the number.
Yeah. I mean, Jim, one of the opportunities I think you mentioned was, you referred to the tail wagging the dog with, I guess, sort of maybe destination-based or some destination optimization within production or maybe within vehicle processing. So, I mean, how feasible is this? I think the Volkswagen Group has experimented with it with some of its plants in Europe. I'm not sure if you have some outcomes you can share.
Not specifically. I know we've got a great interest in having a system that would prioritize our processing in the ports, and that's one thing we want to get. It's peaks and valleys for our inventory. They come in on a big vessel, you got 3,000 cars, you get 500 per day capacity. Which ones go first? Yeah. That's the type of model. And, geographic, model-based, be able to turn those dials to get the most efficient operation while satisfying your customers is what we'd ideally have. And then we'd be able to give a better forecast. Right now, it's the experience of all our port managers that really, to get to deliver.
Right. Yeah.
So with a factory in the U.S., you're much closer to the end product there, so it's hard to influence for the logistics chain. There's technology that can help the logistics chain, but they use technology that helps the production line. Yeah. With Germany, we have a lot more lead time. Okay, it may not get produced the way we would want it ideally, but we know when it's coming, and we're getting pretty good at giving carriers advance notice as to where exactly these cars are going, maybe 5-10 days in advance, and we've seen some real good results when that happens. They're able to align their resources, and we can identify issues a little more proactively, and that's worked real well. We control that. That's the processing side, and we're able to do that in the U.S.
Yeah, yeah. Well, from the provider side, I mean, a lot of this really sounds like it depends a lot on, as we talked about earlier, what the OEM can or is willing to share in terms of pipeline or plans or deeper or longer forecasts. Are you have any good examples? Have you seen progress in this area, or is it a little?
I'll tell you on our part, we're in the process of building some models that will allow us to basically validate whether what a carrier's telling us we think they'll actually be able to perform to that level. Mm-hmm. So if they're giving us some information about a certain number of pieces of equipment that they're going to have available, then we can model whether or not we think that will meet the requirements of our client. So we're in the process of doing that, but it's one of those things that are in an evolution today.
Any other comments there? Or, no? Okay. Any other questions or comments from the audience? Well, if not, I'm not going to play the kind of teacher and keep you here longer than we need to. If we've, if the panel would like to raise any other points, obviously I'm happy to hear them. But if not, we can take a bit longer for coffee. That sound good? Sure. Okay. Well, I want to thank the panel again for the presentations and discussion. For the next session, we're coming back together. We're looking at Mexico, so I think we're going to open the rooms back up. So you might want to bring your stuff with you. And just again, a reminder, if anybody has lost a Mercedes, we've got the keys here.